knowledgehook is it's called an instructional guidance system. And what an instructional guidance system is, we work with one of the toughest parts of the education system. In North America, school systems, as in many parts of the world, are tied to school districts. And they have the money and the capital and the decisions to purchase, in this case, education technology, but they're extremely complicated. In fact, investors at the time hated anyone who tried to pursue school districts. It was the most unpopular thing to do at the time. And for us, for me personally, I realized that these school systems are not going to go away, right? And it's through COVID, you've noticed that parents still have to send their kids somewhere, and that struggle was real, and it was more real once everyone had their kids at home. So these systems weren't planning to go away. Technology was going to replace your school, your classroom, your teacher. See, school systems were also very archaic, but I also knew that if we can solve the problems in the school system from a business standpoint, it also had huge rewards in the long term. Because as you know, in order for a company to be a powerful AI company, what is the one thing they need? They need data. And where is the most useful data? Not the data that the tutor collects at home. That's not useful, that's secondary data. Where's the primary source? The data in the school. And so as we tried to work with these complex systems, we took a long time to get there. We discovered the most important thing for these school systems was essentially the teacher, and how we can use student data to analyze the results, not just for the student to provide their grade or provide feedback, but to evaluate where the teacher is struggling. Because as a collection of students, you can learn something about your teacher. And that then allows us to then work with the school systems to teach the teacher. So, I'm proud to say, the son of a common math tutor is teaching lots of teachers across North America. So where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? I'll share a little bit about how we think of ourselves strategically in the ecosystem of EdTech, right? And then I'll even touch really quickly on what I think the future of education and what I think the future of society is going to look like, from my perspective. So the way I like to look at ourselves is like an ecosystem. So, just to use the most popular example that everyone knows, which is the iPhone, right? So prior to the iPhone, we had 3 or 4 different devices that were siloed in many ways. So what were those devices? It was a phone, right? It was the internet browser. They had Sony MP3 players. Even now we have Apple Watches, right? So look at these different products and look at how Apple entered into each of these pieces. If you think about it from the perspective of why didn't the watch company become an iPhone? Why didn't the telephone company become an iPhone? Right? Why didn't the MP3 player company become an iPhone? Because if you look at each of those businesses, the one that I would argue is the most complex of all of them is the computer company. It was the internet browser, which is the computer company. It's a really complex business. It's a double-sided marketplace. There's a whole operating system. I got to see a little bit of that at Microsoft, right? And it's pretty complex. And there's a go-to-market for developers, and a whole set of complexities there, and there's a go-to-market for consumers, right? There's a whole other, the watch company doesn't have to deal with that, right? The phone company doesn't have to deal with that, right? So the complexity of that company, in order for a watch company to say, okay, one day we're gonna get disrupted, they're gonna have to learn how to become a computer company first and ride Moore's Law and all the other things that were trending towards allowing you to have a computer in your pocket well in advance, and that's very hard to do. Right? That's like an army trying to go up a mountain. And so what I learned before I started knowledgehook is a little bit about competitive strategy, right? And I saw Microsoft, I was right there, and I saw Microsoft essentially gobble up all these companies just with a little bit of resource, simply because they own the enterprise sales ecosystem. It was pretty intimidating to watch it from inside, let alone outside. And what I learned a little bit of competitive strategy is when you go in and build a business, look for the most difficult part of the ecosystem, learn that part of the ecosystem. If it truly is valuable in the long run, do the hard work. It's delayed gratification, delayed revenue, delayed everything. Build your moat before you build your revenue. Learn those things in conjunction. So as you look at the landscape of EdTech, you can easily just categorize the different groups by Jew. Right, on the consumer side. If you go listen to his interviews, he's a really inspiring individual. I'm personally inspired by him. And he's very transparent about his position in the market. He comes from the home. He doesn't believe in the school system. The school system has failed. But the school system's not going anywhere. And if you're an AI company someday, you're going to need data. And the data is in the school, not in the home. So, but that's his position, right? You look at a whole bunch of companies, they went for the quick revenue. And what we decided to do was we looked at it and said, okay, all these things should be talking to each other. It should be an ecosystem. So we started with the district. We're transforming districts. We're teaching the teacher. That's why the schools purchased us. These kids are enjoying it. They enjoy our tools in the classroom. And what we end up doing is this year, in fact, this month, we're now launching the second part of our ecosystem, which is the Tutoring Division. And in the Tutoring Division, we have basically where your kid is struggling. We teach the teacher, so we know exactly, if the teacher's not helping with that specific issue, we know exactly what your child needs. And so for us, this is how we built our ecosystem. It was a long journey. We're very proud about launching this. We're also launching a video game division. Because all the video games have something that, especially culturally speaking, if you're generally if you're from South Asia, there's a lot of motivation to do the homework for many reasons. In the West, it's a little more challenging. So we need a gamification. And I would argue that's going to be the same worldwide. But definitely in the West, it's really important. So kids are not going to, when you're 10 years old, you might make some decisions that will impact you when you're 20. But if a kid is never experienced what that's like, there's nothing they would have done when they were 4 that they would regret at 10. They never truly experienced the consequences of making decisions 5, 10 years up. It's only when you're 18 you start to mature, because you have a little bit of that experience of I should have done that when I was 10. And then when you're 30, right? Okay, so the things I did when I was 20 I could have done differently. So we mature over time. So how do you expect a child to understand a concept that they haven't even lived that long for, something that's going to impact them 10 years out? So we're looking at the problem incorrectly. So we have to basically make this stuff relevant to them now. And that's why the whole gaming industry has a huge, important role to play for the future of education. So we're also launching a game this September, a full-fledged web-based browser game. There's a number of reasons why edtechs can now enter into the game. We believe there will be a company as big as Nintendo and some of the major brands, and it's going to be an edtech company. And we intend that for it to be us. And so we're launching a game that's also connected to the classroom. So how does that work? So all your kids are going and playing these games. They come back to the class, they're a hero, because they did something in the game world that they otherwise would have done at Minecraft, Roblox. They earn points through doing their homework. They come back, and they're all celebrating in our town square in the classroom, which is a virtual experience. So these are the things that our ecosystem essentially is entering into, and this is where we believe a big part of education is going to go. So I'm gonna just end with this very quick, how I'd like to think about thinking into the future. So humans have been around for 200,000 years. Right? 200,000 years is not that long relative to other species. The last 25,000 years, it was only 25,000 years ago did we start to, basically learn human language, the spoken word, right? And and in some ways, the spoken word is like the first software programming. Right? The first people who were coming up with the first words, like Tamil, the oldest languages in the world, it was like software engineering. You're basically building the first compiler for us to communicate. So 25,000 years ago, that happened. About 5,000 years ago, that's when civilization first started to organize itself. And since then, we've been just moving through different ages, right? The Bronze Age, all the way now to the Information Age. And where we're heading is the autonomous age. As many of you should know this already, which is essentially, we're going from a place where information is commoditized, and we want our kids to not just memorize or think about how well you understand a fact or how well you can recall a fact, but how well you can stare at a problem, design the right question you need to ask to get the right answers, critical thinking skills. And that's going to be where all the future jobs are going to be. And I think we're heading into some unprecedented period where we're just going to see an abundance of innovation and technological advancement across many sectors, not just IT. And the future of education has to be able to help education systems transform and help parents even make the cultural shift of what they need to do to be able to support their children towards those skills. Thank you very much for your time.